sales is the most lucrative skill in the world, period. The problem is most sales advice out there today is outdated, cheesy, and can even keep you from getting the deals that can make all the difference in your career. This is the No BS Sales School, a podcast for entrepreneurs and salespeople who want to master the skill of selling without all the BS. Hey, welcome to No BS Sales School podcast. I'm your host, Walker McKay. I want to welcome today somebody who's become a good friend of mine. His name is Brent Keltner. And Brent is a PhD and the founder and president of Winalytics, LLC, a go-to-market and revenue acceleration consultancy. He's the author of the forthcoming book, The Revenue Acceleration Playbook. Winalytics helps clients reach their growth potential by shifting from product-driven conversations to authentic conversations that anchor on what each buyer and customer values most. Hey, Brent, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you very much. And my audience in No BS Sales School is excited to hear what you have to say and excited to hear about your book.
It's great to be here. I've enjoyed the pre-calls, so looking forward to the conversation today.
Where's home, Brent?
I'm in Boston, Massachusetts.
And is it freezing cold there this morning?
I grew up in California, so I'm a transplant.
Okay, so is your blood still thin, or are you getting used to the cold? How long have you been in Boston? Your blood's still thin?
No, I don't mind the cold. I don't mind the cold.
That's freaking awesome, because Boston cold is freaking serious ass cold. You wrote
Boston cold is cold.
It is really cold. So you wrote this book that's coming out in January, the Revenue Acceleration Playbook. And I was lucky you sent me a pre-copy of it. And by the way, No BS Sales School, if you'll hang on to the end, we're going to show you a way that you can get a free copy of the book when it comes out in January. Get an advanced copy of the book like I did in January. So you wrote this book, and there are two kind of main themes. One of them is to make it all about your buyer. And the second one is to find out what they'll commit to do to take action. Right? What will your buyer commit to do to take action? And I think that's such an important subject. I'd rather hang on to the second part about that. I think a lot of people understand you got to make sales about your buyer. But tell me something, your background was not really in sales, right? You didn't start off thinking, I'm going to be a sales guy and I'm going to become a sales trainer guy. You worked for all kinds of organizations. How did your interest change to sales?
Yeah, it's interesting, as you mentioned, and anybody who gets a copy of the book, or we're going to talk about how you can get a free download of the forward in the first chapter. In the first chapter, I talk about my journey from being an academic to being a revenue leader. And as an academic, I was a good researcher. I was trained at Stanford, worked at the Rand Corporation, did a lot of qualitative research, was good at that, but was really good at bringing dollars in the door. And so, 1 year, help raise, was the principal investigator, co-principal investigator on about $3.5 million in grants, and contracts with government organizations. And it turns out I was good at it because I was good at doing exactly what you said, listening to the buyer or the funder.
Amazing.
And understanding exactly what they were trying to accomplish in speaking to me and speaking to Rand as an organization or project that I was considering leading. And then I was good at saying, okay, this is what I heard you say is your goal for that research project or that engagement. What actions do you need to take for us to partner on that? And I actually, as a qualitative researcher, did hundreds of interviews with executives at banks, telecom companies, insurance companies. I thought I needed to develop a commercial mindset to do that because I was trained as an academic. My parents were educators. I didn't think they'd want to talk to me.
Right.
So I developed this commercial set of practices, which was always start with what's in it for you to do an interview with me, qualitative research interview. Who else am I working with that you would recognize? Who are the peers? in the calls, I would always recap and say, this is what I heard you say. Is that right? What you're working on? At the end of the call, I'd send a follow-up email recapping that and confirming any next action. So I built that behavior as a researcher to make myself more commercial. When I went over to the private sector, it turns out what I found people do, and this was 20 years ago, they product pitched. So I showed up in my first roles at Kaplan and then Ventures, and all the sales calls were just like about me, my company, how great we were, how great our product is, why you want to buy it. I was like, this is stupid.
Yeah, and it doesn't work.
And it doesn't work. So that was the next phase. You read the first chapter, the next phase of my journey was I went at my first true revenue leadership role was at Ventures. It was a benchmarking research company focused on colleges and universities, benchmarking enrollment management practices or fundraising practices or student service or student affairs. And I went out to all my buddies in business, right? And I said, hey, give me your go-to-market.
That's still research,
commercial
correct?
research.
Okay, yeah. Got it.
Yeah. Yep. Benchmarking research. And I asked them to give me their resources for selling and go-to-market and positioning. It was all about the product battle cards, competitive positioning. How do you price to get people to buy more of your products, objection handling about your product. And I was again like, okay, so where's the customer? And I went right back to what I had done at Rand and trained my team how to run sales discovery calls like I ran qualitative research calls with this. What's in it for the buyer? What actions will they take?
Did they think you were crazy when you started showing that stuff? Okay.
They loved it. And that was one of the ahas for me. And we teach this now is, look, when you have authentic conversations rather than product-driven conversations, there's actually a lot more engagement from your buyers. I mean, you often don't get to yes in sales, but it's a very intentional conversation about, do we have something to work on together?
Right.
I'm not trying to cram anything down your throat, but these are the problems we solve for buyers. You working on any of those? Could we help you be more successful? So they found it a much more enjoyable way to sell, where you could you felt like a problem solver, not like you were trying to cold call or pitch or whatever. And you also felt like the second part, if I'm asking my buyer, do you agree? And what will you do about it? Now I know where to focus my time.
And so let's dig into that a little. Let's dig into that a little bit more. You said, you get them to, if they agree that that's something that they care about, right? And sometimes it's not. Sometimes that maybe they have the problem that we can solve, but it's not a priority for them, right? And so what you're determining, and a lot of salespeople don't ever get that part, right? They don't understand that maybe just because you can fix it, it ain't a priority for the person, because everybody's got a million problems, including me. If you don't have a million, I'm happy to lend you some of mine to get up to a million, right? But there's only so much bandwidth they can have. And so the second part is once they admit that that's a problem, and they admit then they can realize that they can make this a priority, want to fix it. What I love is, what will they commit to do to take action? And so tell me, let's dig into that. Tell me more about what you're talking about there.
Yeah. So you've nailed it, right? Is you got to get them to express a problem, right? That they agree they have that problem. But then to your point, how big a problem is it? Are they willing to mobilize resources internally to buy? Or not. And the only way, what they say and what they do are two different things. People like social graces, they're probably going to say nice things about you and your product, but what actions will they take? So I think of a company called Credo Reference. It was one of very early when I started Winalytics after being an executive. I started working with them probably 6 years ago. It was one of the early successes on this. We're just getting the team to be much more intentional about how they use the last 10 minutes of every sales call to qualify the buyer. How much fit did the buyer see and what actions would they take, they were able to go from like a 22% to a 35% conversion rate on first meetings. So the team got much more productive, right? I mean, 50% more productive by basically last 10 minutes, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer. This is what I heard. It was a library solution around going from print to digital reference materials. This is what I heard on why you might be interested in buying these titles. You want to have higher currency of titles. You want to reduce your costs, right? You want to make it. This is still when things were going digital. Make it for people to access your reference materials anywhere. So did I hear that right?
Yep.
Verbal confirmation they see fit. And now, I mean, this is the BANT, right? The budget authority is as old as there's different versions of it now. Yeah. But it's basically, okay, if you see fit, who else on your team would we have to involve in the conversation? What's your decision-making process? And can you tell me, like, relative to your other priorities, how high a priority is this? Is it like something you want to need to deal with immediately?
Yeah.
This quarter? Are you just starting to think about it? Where do I fit into your timeline and urgency? And how are things like this typically funded? I'm not asking you, do you have budget? How are things like this typically funded? And has funding been set aside? Great. So I understand all these things. I can recap. And by the way, can we commit to a next call? You're going to go back and talk to your boss, go back and talk to the buying committee. Can we right now, you're going to have that call next week. Can we actually commit to a 15-minute check-in right after you have that call with your boss, with the buying committee, right? So just we have it on the calendar. We can see what the outcome was. So it's basically confirming fit and then going through whatever your version of the BANT and then getting that next call locked in when you're on the call so you avoid drift.
I love that. And so, and if you don't get a solid next step, if they don't commit to a solid next step, then you can just know it's a no, right? And no is completely okay, right? But if they're not committed to do something on their side, then why the hell should we do anything more on our side, right? If we all are, if the seller and the buyer are an equal business stature, then why the hell should we do something on our side? So, and you brought up an interesting point too, right? Sometimes we have to deal with the non-decision maker. We've got to deal with the person who can take us to the decision maker. And I love go back over, what do you do when your sales call, your meeting is with the person who is not the decision maker, but he's the one who can take us to them? What are we asking for there? What is our ask? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. It's a great question. And on this point, so 2 points on what you said is you got to get that connect committed step. Sometimes people can't get the calendar date. They need to bring others in. Yep. So we say, okay, well, look real time in your calendar and say, hey, okay, well, why don't we start with you and me? Can we identify a 30-hour call where you and I can do it? We'll socialize that to others. To your point that let's see what they will commit to. Because if they're still blowing you off at that point, they won't even commit, just you and them, probably not interested, right?
Yeah.
So see what they'll commit to. But then this point on how do you, it was actually another product line with the Credo reference folks. They had a product line called Credo Education where exactly this phenomenon, we're selling to directors of assessment at colleges and universities. And there was just a lot of churn in the pipeline. Not sure what deals to focus on because they had to go to the provost.
Right.
So just introduced a simple step which said, hey, I'm going to summarize the value that you shared, that we agreed to. Will you take that to the provost and confirm whether they see this as a priority or not and something that could be invested in this year? And right. So literally, within 3 weeks, didn't win all the deals, but knew it could filter out pretty much immediately 50-60% of the first calls with director's assessment because they wouldn't ask the provost, or they'd ask the provost and it wasn't a priority. So rather than, the old pattern was director of assessment goes to the assessment committee, brings in some faculty for demos before we get entree to the provost. Total waste of time, right? So it was asking Who else has to decide? Understand the provost is way too busy. Understand the VP of whatever, the CFO, way too busy to join. But I'm going to summarize what I heard. Can you just ask them if it's a big enough priority to consider moving forward now?
There's a second part to that, too. There's a second part to that, too, that I think, and I don't remember if you cover this in your book or not. What I've found is that if the person who's not necessarily the decision maker, but they're the one carrying the water up to the provost, for example, they're the one carrying the thing up there, often the question from the provost in this example is going to be, what do you think? And if they can't say, I think this is a great idea, then it ain't going to fly. And so one of the things that we talk about, and I think you probably do it too, is the person you're talking to, the person you get on the phone, or the person you have this meeting with, if they don't think it's a great idea to do it, then chances are it's not going to happen. Do you cover that as well, right? So you're 100%. Getting them to say, yes, here's a problem that I think happens, and I think we should do this, because if they don't say that, then much less chance of it actually working.
100%. I was talking to a really successful CEO who said, well, I don't really need to write follow-up emails because I can sense in the room, a very high EQ guy, I can sense where we are and what we need to do next. And I said, 100%, I can see that with your track record of success. But how many times are you on the phone and the person who's going to decide is not on the phone?
Right.
And he stopped and he said, a lot. And I said, yeah. And so when you are selling to that decider, what language do you want to use? You want to use your language, or do you want to use your champion's language?
Right.
So to your point, write a follow-up email that the reason to stop and ask your champion or your buyer where they're seeing fit is you want to write down in their language where they saw fit. That's a buyer success statement. Your email should start with, I heard you say this would make you more successful because. Now, when they're selling to the person that's writing the check, it's not a vendor pitching to them. It's the champion that you've helped them capture their words on their success statement. So you just made it easy for them to sell.
Right.
So 100%, get them to tell you what problem it solves, put it in an email so they can sell it forward is exactly the right approach.
I think it's really smart. And one of the things that you've really not harped on, but that you focus on is the email, the summary statement, which helps them help you help them. Right? The whole thing is, right, how do we make this easier? I've seen so many people that try and make, I don't know if they try, but they end up making sales so damn complicated, and they make it hard for the prospect to do anything, right? And most of the time, our prospects are not salespeople, right? They're not. This is the somewhere else in the organization. And so for us to send them up to sell our stuff with no help sucks, right? We're asking somebody who doesn't sell to go sell for us. If we don't give them the tools and the armor to go do it, it ain't gonna work. And that's our fault. We can't send our buyers out to go do that without help.
100%. And I think one of the things you and I talked about in a pre-call at the beginning, that's a nice recap email, which is what I heard you say.
Yes.
Obviously some information about the product, and this is what we agreed to do next. It's that email summary. When you get later, so you had a call with a group of decision makers, and they're leaning in, and you're getting ready for the proposal. We find people often propose way too quickly before you've actually walked through what folks call the path to partnership, or you could call it the close plan, or you could call it the work back plan, right? It's mid-stage deal. I've got my buying group aligned. It's literally, we say, put it on a slide, right? Here's when we did the discovery call date. Here's what we agreed was here buying groups aligned. All right. Typically for us, here are the steps that we go through to closing. We have to identify budget. We have to work through the technical integration plan, right? We have to work, if it's a pilot, we have to work for the proof of concept. We have to get through your procurement process. Let's point towards that kickoff date. and let's build a work back plan to how we get started. Because to your point, we sell this all the time. Our buyers might buy our product once a year, once every couple of years.
Yeah.
They don't know how to buy.
And they've been trained by shitty salespeople.
And they've been trained by crappy salespeople, right? It's like, oh yeah, what do I do with a proposal? No idea. And then they stub their toe on procurement, or they stub their toe with their CFO, or they stub their toe with IT. So having a path to partnership plan, one slide, I mean, literally table, what are our steps, who's responsible, target dates, how do I get through your process? It's a way of avoiding a lot of late stage breakage, a lot of proposals that die. So again, asking them to do things, but being a guide, as you say, like we have to help them know how to buy.
Yeah, because left to their own devices, I have this theory that people don't know how to buy what we sell, no matter what you sell, right? They have been trained by crappy salespeople. And one of the ways we can differentiate ourselves is to show people, here is the path to success. Here is what we do next, right? Instead, because left to their own devices, well, one of the things that you're avoiding in your process, which I love, and we focus on this at the NoBS process too, is we're avoiding the let me think it overs. Because let me think it over is just that's another way for them to say no. It's another version of them saying no, but a lot of times our crappy salespeople don't hear that. They think, oh, let me think it over. This must be a good one. But what is the step? Are you willing to take this actual step? And you talked about proposals, having them help, with premature proposing, as we call that, right? And so my current theory that I work with my clients is go over your proposal verbally first. Don't put that shit in writing. Have them help you write it, but don't put that shit in writing so you've already got an agreement about it before you send it off. I want the process to be completely transparent as best we can do that.
Yeah, great direction. Whatever you again call a path to partnership, your close plan, what you just said is basically you work that verbally, maybe with a visual on the screen of how are our steps, what is our timeline to start, what do we need to get through? This is what we got to fit, right? We got buy-in from the buying committee. And so you're walking through that, and then the proposal is just a written summary of what you've agreed to. It's not a hopeful document about what I hope you are going to do next in your process. But I also, what you said is, let me think about it, right, is all the time, or I need to evaluate, right, with my committee. I think the instinct is strong there. It's like, okay, just share a little bit more, like what needs more work on your side? What would you like to think more about? What do you need feedback from your buying committee on? Just help me understand that so I can make sure I'm arming you with everything you need. Yeah. So understand you need to think more about it. What specifically do you need to think about? How long will that take? When are you meeting with the buying committee? Do you expect to, have time this week to think through it? Can we just get a 15-minute debrief? Might shift. Can we get a 15-minute debrief on the calendar to see where you came out if you need additional information?
Yeah.
So it's a way of using
I tell my clients that if you raise your closing percentage from 22 to 35, right, percent, that still means that 65% of the time you're going to get a no, right? And no's to me, a no early is a hell of a lot better than a no late. And so one of the things that I work with my clients on is to say, I can put this together for you, but I don't want to waste your time. If this isn't something you're fully committed to, just tell me. We can stop right now. I promise it's okay. And that makes a lot of people nervous when I tell them to do that, because they're like, oh, well, that means they know that means they can tell me no. I'm like, they know they can tell you no, for God's sake. Let's just get to no quicker if we can do that. And if they're not willing to take some kind of an action themselves, not just accept our proposal, then we don't have much of a chance.
Yeah, I think again, this smart instinct is because you build a heck of a lot of trust. When you're basically saying, I'm here, you like right now are there, I need you to be here for us to actually work together. Can you move there or not? I can't make you. So I'm not going to try and force your arm. I'm just going to create this opportunity. And when you do that, I think you say, hey, are you ready to think about taking a proposal? Is this meaningful enough to you? You build a lot of trust with people that way.
And I think another thing we do is tell me where this could get screwed up inside your organization. Where are the problems going to pop up? Yep. Who's going to hate this idea? And what are you going to do about that, if anything?
Yep. We in the book, we talk about this idea of an authentic buyer journey, about shifting from product-driven, as you said, I read at the outset, product-driven selling to authentic buyer journey, authentic conversations. And people ask me, what does that mean? What does authenticity mean? And what it doesn't mean is, hey, we have to be a nice guy or a nice gal, and the buyer says jump, and you say how high. Right? Doesn't mean that at all. What it really means is a very intentional conversation. Right? It's a very purposeful, honest conversation on both sides.
Yeah, it's the best
kind.
We're
looking for fit.
Yeah,
it's the best kind. It's about truth, right? We solve this problem repeatedly for our clients. Are you looking to solve that? Will you take action? Can we meet?
Yep.
Right? Can we find a 1 + 1 between us that is good for you, good for your organization, leads to a better outcome? So it really is all about that, being intentional, focusing on what your buyer cares about the most, to see if you can make a match, but they got to take action as well to make a match.
100%. Awesome. So let's talk about this. So Brent, where could people find you if they want to know more about this? And we're going to talk about how they can get the book in just a second, but how could somebody find you, Brent? If they want to know more, hire you, talk to you about what you're doing, get you on their podcast, how could somebody find you?
Yeah, so if the two websites, our book website is authenticitywins.com. Mm-hmm. And you can go there, find out more about the book, download the first chapter of the foreword from David Meerman Scott, who is my book coach, or they can come right to winalytics.com, WINALYTICS.com, and they'll find out more about us, and they can email me directly, Keltner at winalytics.com.
B. Keltner, KELTNER, correct? Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
At winalytics.com.
All right. So Brent has agreed that for listeners, if you will do the following, when you hear this podcast and or when you see the clip that we'll put, the multiple clips we put on social media, if you want a pre-copy of the book, the entire book, if you will share the clip of the podcast or put or say, hey, I listened to this great podcast, and put it in the link and tag me, Walker McKay or Brent Keltner on LinkedIn, he will send you a copy of the book. He'll reach out, get your address, and send you an actual copy of the book. So if you want a copy of the book, post on LinkedIn that you listen to this podcast, the No BS Sales Podcast with Brent Keltner, and that you enjoyed it, and tag me. We'll make sure you get a pre-copy of the book. And I think it's exciting. It's a great book, and I'm glad you wrote it, Brent. That's really awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Walker. We I'll just say this is on that. So anybody who promotes it on LinkedIn, we're building a group. We call it Team Authenticity Wins.
Ooh, I love it.
To promote our idea about an authentic buyer journey on LinkedIn, do early book reviews. So we'll send everybody part of that team, and anybody who promotes it on LinkedIn will be considered part of that team. We'll send them a free copy of the advanced copy at the end of January, early February. The book actually comes out in April. But Walker, I have become evangelical about this.
Yeah.
Right. And I when I started selling, it was just people like the traditional sales leaderships, not all, but a lot of them just looked at me like I was an idiot, focusing on the buyer success statement and this recap email and hey, where is what's your close technique? People would ask me. Tell me more about your product pitch or sharpening your differentiation. And I felt like I've been on an island for a long time doing great client work, but we're not a moment where I don't know what inning. I think it's the second inning, but people are getting that in the new world where buyers are overwhelmed with information, focusing first on buyer empathy. Where's my buyer today?
Yep.
And second on being a problem solver and what can we work on together? And third, being intentional about where there's fit. I mean, it's just not only are you much more successful in selling, but you enjoy your work a lot more. You don't feel like a used car salesperson. You're basically, it's about being a problem solver, and you learn from every single buyer and customer. So I am just totally fired up. I mean, this podcast with you and others is about, just saying, no, there's a better way, and we're going to do it. Screw this product stuff. We're going to lead with our buyer, what makes our buyer more successful. We're going to enjoy our work more and make more money doing it.
It's freaking awesome. Hey, No BS sales team, I hope you've enjoyed today. Brent is a great guy, and he's fun to talk to, and the book is going to be awesome. I hope you guys will sign up. I hope you'll sign up for it and put on, promote this podcast episode and tag me in it. Tag team on hashtag team authenticity. Team authenticity wins is the hashtag to put in there, and we'll get you a free copy of the book.
Just do authenticity wins hashtag.
Thank you.
It's great.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. No BS sales team, subscribe to the podcast. Share it with somebody who needs to know it. Brent, thank you so much. Appreciate you being here, and I'll look forward to talking to you again soon.